because we're seeing that we can't rely on the systems the way it was before. So, with this, it's impossible for me to say every single thing that's going to happen, but these are currents that are happening, and these are waves. And every once in a while we have a big wave and it changes the consciousness of humanity. And that's another humongous wave that is coming in right now. Yeah. And it's going to be beautiful in the sense because we're connecting with more multidimensionality as well.
All right. Danielle Paige, welcome to the podcast. What are you most excited about right now in your life?
Ooh, that I'm about to go on a trip to Morocco and Greece.
I was just in Morocco. I got really sick there.
Oh, great.
It was like an upgrade or something, but
yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Two beautiful countries.
Yeah, it happens. It could happen anywhere.
You've done a couple of retreats out in Greece as well, right?
I have in the past, yes. Almost feels like a former lifetime now, before 2020. Yeah. So, yeah, I did several retreats there.
So where to begin? I think because we're two Sagittarius ascendants where we like to see things from a very philosophical, wide, broad scope. And I like to start off almost every podcast in that wide perspective and give people sort of this macro view. And then we start getting into the practical. And really, I was tuning into what you were saying about what is happening for this year, like some energetic forecast for this year. Mm-hmm. Of course, having your expertise with astrology and learning to read these themes. In 2023, 2 outer planets are changing signs. And you're saying that this is going to be a time of great transformation, a lot of awakening. Pluto is going to Aquarius. And I'd like to just start off by asking you, in the big picture of things, what is going on in the world right now? And you also mentioned an important date, which is March 23rd. So I just wanted to open up the space for you to kind of give us a rundown of what's going on in the world right now.
Oh my gosh, what is going on in the world? I guess that we should start with what isn't going on in the world right now. I know from an astrological standpoint, that's kind of the lens that I view through, and things channel through from there. I can apply and I can speak from that language. So March 23rd, which what you mentioned, Pluto goes into Aquarius. So Pluto is a very slow moving planet. It has been in Capricorn since 2008. And Pluto is a planet of power, of transformation, of rebirth, regeneration. Okay, so it goes in and it pulls things out. It is the journey of the caterpillar into the butterfly. And it's really about that, like what happens in between in the chrysalis, right? That's Pluto. So it goes in and it pulls things out. It pulls things out what's not in alignment with the highest good. So when it went into Capricorn in 2008, just to give you guys a little preview to kind of understand, that's when we had 2008, 2009. That's when we had the recession, the financial crisis, right?
Yeah, the banking.
I was very aware of that because I had just, I was working in interior design and architecture, and then there were no design jobs. And that was the beginning of my awakening. Yeah. So everything always happens for a reason. So when Pluto went in, Pluto was pulling out all the systems that were not working, right? And then I'm just abbreviating here in a nutshell. So Pluto is now moving into Aquarius, where it's going to dip in this year and then go back into Capricorn for most of the year and then go back into Aquarius. But the most important thing is we're starting to get a preview. And Pluto hasn't been in Aquarius since, I believe it was 1778, 1779. And if you think about what happened around then, that was the Industrial Revolution. So that was the advancement of society, of our collective, of technology, we knew it. So it took from, one person going to make something to it being mass produced. Now, again, with this, I'm not saying that this was great or bad or, none of this is really, I'm going to try to leave my opinion out of it, but it's important to understand where the collective was, right? And so where we're going. So with it moving into Aquarius, it is very much about the technology of the future. So Aquarius is the future. Aquarius is connected to Uranus, which is the superconscious. So it is light years ahead of everything. Just like why you are 24 and so in tune and so aware, you know, the children coming in, the kids your age, the people in their 20s, you guys have such higher, like your DNA is turned on more than a lot of people before. Right. And that's just the way it is. Like I had to go through my journey at 30. I had my awakening. We could talk about that later. And I had to wake up. But there's so much more technology in you that is active. Right. So that's what Aquarius is doing. Aquarius is bringing this inner technology and outer technology. So in some respects, we're going to see a lot going on with AI. I mean, obviously we know about that, but it's going to be taken to another level. And, you know, and this is where the balance happens, because with any transit or with anything we go through, there is a shadow side. And that's just the reality of life. We live in a dualistic universe. There's polarity here. And so there is going to be a shadow. You know, the shadow side of Aquarian energy is, okay, just hook me up, put a chip in my arm. I don't want to think for myself, hook me up to the cloud, and I'm just good to go to live for 10 million years. But like, I'm not really moving from space of heart and soul. Right. So with that, that's going to come into the picture too, because that's what always happens. But what we're going to see is Pluto and Aquarius is going to be a lot about the revolution from the government, really, because Capricorn was very top down, government systems, how it is, right? You're
structure.
Structure, you're rich, I'm poor, whatever it is, right? And the hierarchy of that. Aquarius is power to the people. And especially Pluto and Aquarius is power to the people. So it's, you know, it's interesting right now, the way the government was supposed to be that we know everything about the government, and it's actually reverse, inverted matrix that we live in, that the government knows everything about us and we don't know everything about them, right? So Aquarius energy is going to be moving to power to the people. We're going to be implementing new structures. We're going to be doing things on our own. There's going to be a lot of, you know, growing our own food. Even that's definitely happening, but even more because we're seeing that we can't rely on the systems the way it was before. So, you know, with this, it's impossible for me to say every single thing that's going to happen, but these are currents that are happening, and these are waves. And every once in a while we have a big wave and it changes the consciousness of humanity. And that's another humongous wave that is coming in right now.
Yeah.
And it's going to be beautiful in the sense because we're connecting with more multidimensionality as well.
Yeah. And I remember I was 16. I was living in California from where you grew up. And my mom was also going through this spiritual awakening. At that point, my only focus was playing basketball, learning to talk to girls, and being a high school kid.
Totally.
But my mom was going through this whole thing. And I remember her in the house, like beginning to meditate, going to yoga classes. Eventually, she went down the path of becoming an instructor in Kundalini yoga.
Amazing.
And Yogi Bhajan, she was always telling us, like, this is the age of Aquarius. This is the age of Aquarius. And I never truly knew exactly what she meant until I found this astrology, the language you call it. It's a language that you remembered. That's, I think, in our energetic soul. Like it's in there. So is this what you're referring to with that we're entering the age of Aquarius? What does it really mean? Because I know in 2012 there was a big year there.
Yeah, so that's a loaded question, and it actually depends on what astrologer you talk to. A lot of people will say we entered the age of Aquarius, we're in the age of Aquarius, and then some people say we are going to enter in. I don't actually have the exact answer because I'm not a mathematician, looking at the precession of the equinoxes. So I don't exactly know. But what I do know is with this energy, with Pluto moving into Aquarius and all the air energy that we have, we are moving into that. So it was the Pisces energy, and then it's moving more into Aquarian energy. So and again, these ages of enlightenment, they last for such long periods of time. So this is where on the linear level, we have to not worry that if we're in it, if we move into it next week, right? Because even if we're not in it, let's say, energy, as we know, is not black and white. It moves, it permeates, we breathe it in, it seeps in through our soul. So we're feeling energy even before an exact transit of something. So yes, to answer your question, the archetype of Aquarius is very strong, and it's going to be very, very strong, even more from March 23rd on, and especially next year, because this is about a 40-something year journey. We're not going back, right? We're not going back to the way it was. And I think what people need to understand is that these shifts, while we might see something big on the world stage right away, and it's almost guaranteed to happen, these are subtle and not so subtle, sometimes shifts in the undercurrent of our psyche. And so this is where we're just moving it along. The exact reason why, and you can just say it. So I want to just paint this picture for you. So I had my awakening in 2009. At the time, I was all of a sudden seeing through this veil and seeing sacred geometry and spirits and ghosts. And I'm like, what in the hell is going on? Because I did not grow up like that. Yeah. And there was nobody around for me to talk to, right? This wasn't a thing. Now, if somebody has an awakening, they could go on Instagram, they could go on Facebook and, hey, this coach or this person or this, whatever they're doing, this healer, there's more people available. Now, I'm not going to say I was the only one because I definitely wasn't. It just wasn't in the consciousness and it wasn't available to us and as mainstream as it is becoming now. So that's this journey that we're on of this awakening and consciousness. I mean, there's so much I could say on that. We could talk for hours.
No, for sure. And even tuning into, the details behind your story when you were going through that spiritual awakening, your third eye was completely open. And I wanted to talk about this for people to understand, like, what can actually happen to this extent when you're going through an awakening like this, that you were seeing like holograms of spiders, just like even scary, like
how
shadow.
Do you know that? I love that you did your research.
And you explained that it was sort of like moving through dimensions.
Yes.
And you were explaining as well, like we are multidimensional and you are moving through these lower dimensions so that you can eventually see the higher consciousness. So what was that process like? Like, what were you feeling when you were moving through these dimensions essentially?
Yeah. So my journey happened. And again, like I did not have anyone to talk to about this. When my first inkling was through dreams and it was very real. And I started seeing stuff during the day. And then it moved to seeing a spirit where I was wide awake and looking at it. And I'm thinking, I'm losing my mind. Like, what am I looking at right now? Right. And then, spirit was guiding me. So it's weird. It's funny actually, because at the time I was so like, somebody tell me what to do. Spirit, come on, tell me what to do. Tell me what to do. But yet they were guiding me the whole time. And I was obviously listening to the instructions, but I was still thinking it was going to be like someone stands next to me and is like, Danielle, okay, this is what we're going to do. Right. It's not like that. So when I was going through this, I started waking up in the middle of the night and seeing a lot of, like you said, like a lot of snakes, a lot of spiders, a lot of really scary things. And what it looked like is when you think of, a cartoon for Disney and they wave the magic wand and you see all these shapes and then it goes into like all these little dots. Yeah. That's exactly what it looked like in front of me. So I started seeing, I know it was wild and like no plant medicine, totally sober, like I'm like, okay, what's going on? So when that happened, I got really scared. And when I saw the spirits, I got really scared. And what they were teaching me and showing me, and I always say spirit was my first teacher. What they were showing me is to not be scared, because if I am scared, then I'm going to call in other lower frequencies. So that's a metaphor for life as well, right? I mean, we all have fear, right? But to learn to move through it because it will attract other things. And I'm like, who am I talking to? And like, what the hell? Like, I'm not supposed to be scared, right? So that was a lot for me. But with the spiders and with everything, what I came to have learned with this is I was moving through dimensions. I was moving through realities. And because my third eye had opened for the first time in 30 years, I mean, in this lifetime, it wasn't, I think there was maybe one or two incidents when I was younger, but I closed it down. I got so scared. So it was just Pandora's box ready to burst open. And it was so much that thank God it has pulled back, because I wouldn't be able to function if it was really that much. Like there's just no way. But again, it was just kind of the first burst. So yeah, they taught me that I had to not be scared. I had to just breathe through it, that I was seeing things and moving through different realities. And then through that process, that's how I learned, wow, there's actually so many dimensions. There's so many realities. There's so many things going on. And again, this was in 2009. I didn't read this in a book. I didn't have a healer. I eventually had someone help me later on. Thank God for that. Because I was like, I have a list of questions. What is going on, right? But yeah, it was a journey to understand. And the biggest thing with my awakening was, and this is what I want people to know, everyone's awakening is going to look different. Mine was very dramatic because they needed to get my attention, and this was my journey. But the biggest thing here that is so important is that for the first time in my life, even though I did not know what was going on and it was very scary and confusing, I felt something in my heart that I've never felt before. And I felt this connection to my soul that I didn't even know was missing. So my whole life before that, I felt very lonely. I spent my childhood crying in my bedroom so much and not having the words or awareness that like I wasn't from here. Or, I mean, none of us are, right? When people think they're from here, I'm like, hello, newsflash, you're not. But right, I felt that strongly, but I didn't have the words, you know?
Yeah.
So I didn't know, and I just felt very stuck in this density, always having issues with my body, hating my body, feeling stuck, right? Because I was used to being a light body, and then all of a sudden I'm in this density, but I didn't know that. Okay. But now I could say that in hindsight, but I didn't know. So for the first time during this awakening, I was very aware that I'm like, I have no idea what the hell is going on, but something is happening and I feel more in love than I've ever felt in my entire life. And that's what kept me going. And I could almost cry saying that because that's what kept me on the track. If I had this awakening and it didn't feel good and it felt dangerous and scary and this was like totally fucked up, excuse my language, then I would have not continued this journey, right? So it felt so good in my heart that I continued on.
I want to talk about this journey of, you know, being accustomed to being in this light body and coming down to density and form and dealing with the human body. You in 2017, you were in Colombia. You were there for a little bit.
Yes.
You were there for a little bit.
Yes.
And at first they thought it was a food poisoning. Eventually that evolved in turning into an Epstein-Barr. And then you went through Lyme's disease. And there were just a series of health challenges that you've been through. I know you're very into biohacking and health optimization as well.
Yes.
So I wanted to talk about this journey of where was that initial disconnect with your body that led to this incoherence in the cells of your body? And how are you able to kind of emerge from the coherence and the wholeness to bring your body back into wholeness? Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful question. And I love the way you worded it because that's exactly what it was. It was a complete incoherence with my body, with my soul, with everything. So just to back up so people know, my first awakening was 2009. We have many, and I'm going to have many more, and you're going to have many more. And that's just the journey of consciousness. 2017, when I was in Colombia, I did get sick with food poisoning, which happens when you travel, at times. But that to me was the turning point. So, depending on your body, depending on your microbiome, depending on your constitution, you get food poisoning and you just kind of move on, right? You get better, you heal, and then you move forward. So what happened to me is I did get very sick and then it did get a little bit better, but it was towards the end of the trip. And I just wasn't feeling right. Something was feeling off, but I knew I was going home, so I wasn't really worried about it too much. And when I came back, that's when things started happening. So I started getting very, very sick. And to go back to answer your question, is that was basically the perfect storm. So the food poisoning just was the perfect storm in my microbiome for years and years and years of, where do I begin? Antibiotics, right? Vaccines, tap water, processed food. Growing up in a house with, there was a lot of trauma that I went through, right? And had to deal with, we all have different levels of trauma. And there was a lot of sadness and a lot of pain that I went through. And so what people don't understand is, what does that do in your body, right? You don't just move on unless you really release it. It becomes disease. So I was basically a ticking time bomb, just waiting to happen. Now, that's one perspective. On another perspective, which I did learn, so from 2017 to pretty much 2022, I went through my health crisis. I'm pretty much coming out the other end now. I'm always just fixing a little bit things here and there, but I feel really good overall. But from a higher perspective, I know now, and I pretty much knew in this process, that I was going through a massive awakening. And this was contracted for my soul. This was contracted for my journey. And so at first, when they told me that, I was like, okay, great. Been there, done that. Let's go. Right. Okay. I was sick. I had like the flu-ish, for a little while. And then I was like, okay, great. Like now that I'm past that, like, let's move on. And then I got sick again. And then I got sick again. And then in this process, there was so much rewiring that had to happen. And again, you think, okay, well, I had this massive awakening before. What about this? This was just a whole other level. So at this point, before this, I was very unaware of anything going on in the government, very unaware of anything on big pharma. Honestly, it didn't impact me on a daily basis. So I didn't really think about it, right? Where I think most of the world before 2020 was like that for the most part. So I never really thought about it. And then I started seeing and I started learning about our health system because it kept making me more sick. And then through this journey, I was led by spirit. They never gave me the 10 steps ahead. They would keep giving me, okay, talk to this person, try this, right? And they would keep dropping stuff in me. And I was very frustrated on this journey because I'm like, we know this is an awakening. Can you just tell me, like, when is this going to be done? And they never
subtle
did.
guidance.
The subtle guidance. Yeah.
Little steps.
Yep. But they never told me because we have to be in the journey. We can't bypass this. This was my journey. So I did learn that I contracted this. I did have Lyme. And what I want to say with that, when you have Lyme, you have Epstein-Barr and all these co-infections. And Lyme is like a wrecking ball that goes through your body. It's literally one of the most horrific things that you could experience. Crawling on the ground, slurring my words, brain fog so bad, could barely remember my name, couldn't look at an astrology chart. Like, I'm having to run a business and make money so that I could pay for my medical bills that were all out of pocket because I didn't go through Western medicine because they were making me more sick. So on this journey, I mean, there's so many ways I can go with this, but on this journey, I had to learn. I had to deepen my trust. I had to, exactly what you were asking before, I had to unwire and unravel the trauma in my body and go through massive, massive awakening and bring my body back into coherence. And it was literally one of the hardest things that I went through. I mean, going from 2017 to 2022, where waking up almost every day feeling horrible. Waking up, sometimes I found out what the vagus nerve was, not because I read it, but because all of a sudden I'm like, I can't breathe. What is this? I even went to get an x-ray of my chest in the beginning until I learned, oh, there's something called the vagus nerve that Western medicine is not going to talk about. And again, not to trash Western medicine at all. It's emergency medicine and I'm very grateful for it, but it's going to change over the next few years because it's not working. It's actually making people more sick. So there's new technologies, new healing that's coming in, and we have to be open and aware to, we were in a program that this is the way it is. You talk to a doctor in a white coat and you don't listen to your body. And this is just the way it is. That's how I grew up and a lot of people in my generation and before me. And that is changing. Like, we're seeing that change. So to go back to your question, my body was completely incoherent. And it was also a massive awakening. So lots of times, when people have an illness, or I'll say this, Spirit told me in the beginning, which I actually heard Dr. Joe Dispenza say years later when I went to one of his events. But Spirit told me, and it was probably 2018, they said, do not tell people you have Lyme. Because once I got tested because I didn't know it was wrong, right? I had no idea. So you almost can't fix something if you don't even know like what's going on. I had to learn about my body. And so once I had Lyme, I was like, okay, it kind of makes more sense. And like, I kind of knew what direction to go. But they told me, don't tell people you have Lyme, because if you tell people you have Lyme, they're going to see you as Danielle who has Lyme, and you're not going to be able to heal from it because they're going to hold you in the field. So they told me that in 2018, which is huge, huge, huge. And that's why, I am a big advocate for helping people, but you will never see in my profile like Lyme warrior, Lyme no, because that's not the truth of who I am. And going through this journey, I had to understand that I am Danielle on a journey, on a mission. I did not come here to be sick. I mean, I'm not even Danielle, but I'm playing the role as Danielle in this lifetime. And I'm not here to be sick. I'm not here to have Lyme. Lyme is an experience and an upgrade. And I will get through this because this is not my identity of who I am.
Yeah. I want to just dial in for people what you meant when you said that they would hold you in the field if they started seeing you as X that has X. We start putting ourselves in these categories. Emilio, the basketball player, Danielle, the astrologer. What do you mean when people say that they hold you in the field?
So if enough people are seeing you as this, then that becomes a frequency and a timeline in the quantum field. We are actually creating that field. And they showed me how it's going to be harder for you to heal. If everyone has the collective mind as Danielle with Lyme, then you will become Danielle with Lyme, and it becomes an identity, it becomes a frequency, it becomes an imprint also in my body.
Yeah, you see that in a lot of this work where people have been for a lot of time trying to change things matter to matter, going on that diet. And you go to, you mentioned Dr. Joe's events. I've been to a couple, and you see these in-person live transformations almost instantaneously when someone connects to that divine field.
Yes.
And they fill their whole body with wholeness. And all the cells, essentially, they start jiggling because the frequency is so high that they have that biological upgrade instantaneously. Did you have any moments in your healing journey where it was an immediate, like, oh, this was the moment that I didn't become Danielle with Lyme, but this cosmic body?
So I had many moments. That's a really good question, and I want to explain this to people. I had many moments that were downloads. I call them downloads. You can call them whatever you want to, that they just come through, these epiphanies, this knowing. So yes, I had those on the mental plane. But as I've seen with my body, and this is changing because we're moving to more light bodies, my mind was way less dense than the physical body. So the downloads will come through, but for me and my journey, it wasn't instant in the changing of my body. It was a long journey on the physical level. And that's why my podcast is called Cosmic Body, because I learned so much that is literally not just this human, take a pill and you're done. We are a connection. We are a network. And when I see it, it's just like feels and like octopus, but all these wires connecting to the quantum field, connecting to everything all around us. And that impacts us and affects us, as well as our emotional, physical, mental, and spiritual.
I love that. And I was also getting into your story, and you said once that you're writing a whole book on soul connections.
Oh God, yes.
And there's that story of when you were in that partnership, and you guys went to France on your 30th birthday, and this man essentially broke up with you on the day of your birthday in France, in Paris. So I wanted to ask you, when it comes to, and I do this a lot when I'm meeting someone new, and I'll be like, hey, what's your sign? Like, where is your moon? And we try to, here's the thing, understanding a little bit of astrology. Obviously, I'm nowhere to the point where someone that actually knows astrology can read into the energies. Yeah. But when you're, let's say, meeting a soul connection, where do you look at for, is there a match? Is there an energetic, alignment between these two souls that just came together? What can you tell us about, those soul connections and how it relates to astrology?
So I'm going to tell you something that probably a lot of astrologers won't tell you, because the work I do in the world, yes, astrology is a beautiful tool, but it's so much beyond that. Because if I just stayed in astrology, I would be so limited. That's like me speaking the ABCs all day long. It's a beautiful tool and I love it. And I'm grateful that I have those codes, but there's so much more. So with astrology, when you meet someone, sure, you can absolutely see, if someone's south node is connected to your sun or your moon or your inner planet, there is a past life connection. You could also see, like a camaraderie, like a banter you can feel between someone based on, if someone's planets are in a certain, like their inner planets are similar to someone else's inner planets. But at the same time, this is also the jacket that we chose to come through in. So your soul is deeper than just that.
Yeah.
So there's an imprint for sure, the behavioral patterns that you do, but then your soul is imprinted in that. And so, when I first got involved in astrology and, dating all these guys, and I was like, okay, I'm just pulling up everyone's chart.
Stay away from the Scorpios.
Actually, I like the Scorpios,
Okay.
I like it.
Me too.
Yeah.
Shout out, mom.
Yeah. Of course, that's why she got into Kundalini. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, at first, if I had the soul connection with someone, I would look at the chart. And this is what made me realize. I remember there was this guy in, I don't even know, years ago, 2012 maybe. And we kept bumping into each other around LA. And it was to the point where we're like, okay, we have to talk. Like it was wild. And we both kind of like knew. And we both knew there was a connection there, but we were like, exploring to see what it was about. And when I pulled up his chart and I looked at it, we had both of like, when you read astrology books on synastry, it's called, by looking at two people's charts, and they tell you like what to look for, me and him had it. It was just like blowing my mind as like someone newer in astrology, learning this. So I'm like, oh my God. And then of course, I'm like, oh my God, this is my husband. And then through that process, what I learned is, to be honest, like no shade, nice person, not for me. I couldn't even stand him after a while. Okay. So like, it just was not for me, but we would constantly bump into each other. And I'm like, oh God, like, and he still like messages me sometimes on Facebook and I'm like, no, we're done. But so why I'm bringing that up is you can have what looks like the most amazing connections in astrology, but we still have free will and we still have our soul journey. And I can guarantee that he's not my person. Do you know what I'm saying? That doesn't mean anything bad about him, but that's where astrology, you can see all these connections. So it just shows the interaction, but what you choose to do with it and how you choose to play it out is another level that a lot of astrologers won't talk about.
Yeah. And you had a vision, which was interesting, about regarding your motherhood, where you said, I can feel her coming. And
wow, I just want to give you a shout out right now for all the podcasts I've been on. I'm so impressed. And like, that's just so beautiful because it shows how much you care.
Cancer.
Yes.
Can't do anything.
When I talk about your chart and mine, we're gonna talk about some stuff here. So
yeah,
yes.
I'd love to get into that because even that goes, because we're talking about romantic partnerships and things like that, but such things as our family, our parents that we chose.
Oh yes.
If you can feel that your child, their energy, how is that like? Like, how is that experience like for you?
Okay, so this is wild. It's also wild because I think some people can judge and they can be like, oh, if this is like wishful thinking. And I'm going to be honest with you. My whole life, it's been about my partner. I've actually been very scared to have a child in the past because of just kind of things that happened in my childhood. And I was afraid to bring that in. And I didn't want to do that to a child, right? It wasn't horrible. My parents are very nice people, but, they didn't know certain things, and that's just the way it is. I chose them, which we could talk about. So I was never been that girl that's like, oh, I'm just dreaming about being a mom. Like, honestly, it wasn't. I was more scared than anything. So she started coming through in 2018. And when she first started coming through, and I just put together something recently. So she started coming through when I was dating, well, use those terms loosely these days, dating this guy that we had a major, major soul connection with. And I still for many years was like, I don't understand why, because he's not the father, but she started coming through when we were, together. And I now learned that it was because that was such a reunion for us. And such a massive heart opening that in that reunion, even though it was a short time I was with him, that opened my heart so much. And it was like the gateway for her to come in. So wow. These are beautiful. And I just found out recently because I did not understand, like, why him? He's not my person. It's not her father. But it was the massive heart awakening that like, we just like, every time we saw each other, it was just like, whoom, ripped open. So she started coming through. And I, at one point, felt her as if I was holding her in my arms like this, that it was so massive, the feeling and the overwhelm and the emotion that it brought me to tears. And that's the same energy of why we can talk to people that have passed over and how I can feel her even if she's not here. And every time I talk with any of my healers or guides or, they all see her, they all tap in, we all talk about her because she's there and she's prevalent. So it's powerful. And, I was scared at first to have a girl because I was like, oh, I just, didn't have the best relationship with my mom growing up, even though it's so much better now. Thank God we've worked at it. But I was scared. And it's like, that's exactly why. And with her coming in, I am ending certain patterns in my lineage and she's starting the new one. But I also want to say is that she comes to me as a female all the time. And I have been given information that actually recently from someone that I was talking to, but she's also told me that, and this is what the children do, if at the last minute she needs to come in as a boy, then she'll come in as a boy because it depends on their contract and our contract and all these things. So it doesn't matter. It's the same frequency, the same energy. But right now she's appearing and by the plan, she's coming in as a girl, but that could change. And she's made that very clear to explain that to me, you know?
Yeah, I'm fascinated by that knowingness in the heart. And I think that's also what allows things to materialize. And I wanted to ask you, have you gotten any insights from her or she or him about this new wave of children that are coming into the world right now? Because I know you're also into Dolores Cannon's work and QHTT. I think the method is called that she created, and she talks about the 3 waves. Is there a new wave that's coming in, and is she part of it? What insights have you gotten from that wave?
So I don't know. I haven't actually read too much about the 3 waves. And sometimes I purposely don't because I don't want to interrupt my channel and with the stuff coming through. Not to say, I mean, I'm sure it's amazing and brilliant, but I actually don't know about that. And from the information that comes through to me, I don't get, like, everyone wants to know, like, what are they called? And those are all very linear human things. And I don't get names for that. And
Let's put a name on them.
Exactly. And like, I don't know of a new wave. I mean, we can call anything what we want to call, but all I know is that they're being born now. I mean, it's been since 2020. And they're coming in, and it's only going to get more accelerated as we go. So even after she's born, the children coming in after are going to be just like, you know. But the biggest thing that's happening is these children aren't coming in with this massive, and you can call it karma. I really don't have another word for it right now. We'll call it karma. Massive amounts of karma and shedding that I had to do, that many people in my generation had to do. They're coming in already online, if that makes sense. They're coming here, and that's their frequency of coming to the planet is going to shift the actual planet because they're imprinting their codes. So it's like doing grid work. So by coming through, and they know what they're coming for. There's a lot of people that's like, I don't want to have kids because of all that's going on. And it's like, oh my God, no. They got these. It's not like there's no savior, but these kids that are coming through, they're shifting the trajectory of Earth. They're shifting the frequency and the vibration by them being them. So they're already connected to their DNA, the spiritual DNA. The junk DNA that people call it, or the scientists call it, is the funniest thing to me. There's no junk here, right? But we're activating more of our DNA, but they're coming in already online. So I already know that I'm going to have missions with her. I already have work that we're going to do, and she's going to teach me a lot, and I mean, there's so much to this. The families they choose, when they're coming in, why they're coming in. And actually, this is really interesting. So she has not been coming to me lately, and I haven't felt her, but I know that she's like off on a mission. She's doing something. So I knew that. And so I was just introduced with someone recently, and they do spirit baby readings, and she was like a friend of a friend. So we were talking. So we had a session, and what was coming through for her. She kept calling her baby girl, and it was like, ooh, she had to correct herself because the soul that's coming through. I think what people need to realize is we see them as babies, but this is a soul. This is a being. There's no age over there, but she kept correcting her. She's like, I'm not a baby girl. She's like, I'm from the beginning of time. And really, like literally, she was like, I'm not a baby girl. She's like, I'm going to come into form as a baby girl. And I get to have that experience of what it's like being on my back and laughing, because she hasn't had that. But I think that's what people need to realize is like, a lot of these they're not children like we see it. These are old souls from the galaxy and beyond that are coming through to be here on Earth for this mission, for this awakening, for this consciousness. But they're not babies. Does that make sense? But they're going to have to be babies, but they're not babies right now.
Yeah. And you mentioned this mission, that I think every single soul here is on a mission. And if you were to summarize, put it sort of like on a nutshell, what is the mission that you're on right now?
You know what's so funny? I just wrote down before, I'm going to answer your question. And after I just did the podcast, I said, I need to rewrite my mission. I literally wrote that down on this paper here. So the fact that you're asking me, because I'm like,
let's write it down right now.
I'm like, I need to redo and get very clear, because I am shifting and changing so much that when I started, it's not the same. So the fact that you just asked me this and I just wrote this down, like, this is sure sign from spirit that we got to get this going, But in summary, it's almost like what we're all here for, to help humanity awaken through this consciousness. I mean, that's what I know that my mission is, and how it plays out through our personality, through our tools, and through whatnot. Like, that's the joy of, I get to express as Danielle, and Danielle is sarcastic. Danielle is no bullshit. I'm like, Danielle's a good time sometimes, she could come off a little bit rough, but she's also incredibly sensitive and has compassion for the underdog. And that's what I'm here for. So it's to help humanity go through this awakening and move to higher states of consciousness, and to remember the truth of who we are.
I love that. And you said once that astrology is also like your side job. And I think your psychic abilities go way beyond just learning how to read people's birth charts and understanding the language of astrology. But people are very curious about astrology nowadays. Yes. And I wanted to tap into a little bit of like, what does your reading method look like? If maybe we could give an example for people. I sent you my birth chart or my birth information last night.
Yeah.
If you would like to just open up and kind of people to get a grasp of what you're looking at, what you're seeing, how you tap into that energy.
Yeah. So I actually don't do a lot of readings anymore, one-to-one. I did them for 8 or 9 years. And now I do more group stuff, but every once in a while I will give one away for free in a full moon reading, or offer them, because I still like to be on my game, and it's such a beautiful tool that I know it helps people connect back to who they are. So, a couple of things that I start differently with everyone. It's always, sitting down, feeling the energy, allowing my field to merge with theirs, and seeing what needs to be shared and what information they need. So it always starts there. And then I'm just, getting information as we go with that. It's interesting. There's some stuff coming out with your throat chakra, which is interesting because you're obviously doing this, but your throat chakra is even opening more and more and more and more and more. So that's happening for you right now on a massive level. Okay, so your chart is very interesting. We have a lot of similar. We're both Sagittarius rising, which you mentioned before. And what's really interesting here is your sun is in Cancer and your moon is in Taurus. I'm reversed. Okay. Yeah. So we have that same kind of constitution. And also both our Venus is in Gemini. So it's very, very interesting. We have a lot of similarities in the chart.
That's what I remember when I reached out. I'm like, I looked at your chart or what you wrote in your bio on your website. And I'm like, it's the same energy.
Yes, it's the same constitution, the same energy. So yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, so it's also really interesting to start or to look at the South Node and the North Node axis. And we can talk about this here real quickly.
Sure.
That is, to me, is the backbone of your whole chart. Without that, that's like going to a play or watching a movie in the middle and being like, well, what's the plot? Like why are they fighting or why are they kissing? Like, I don't know what's going on here, right? So the South Node, North Node axis is really the evolutionary journey of your soul. And the North Node in the chart shows where your soul is moving towards and the lessons and experiences throughout life that, you're here to learn. Okay, so the South Node is your deeply ingrained behavioral patterns. So this is I tell people it's almost like having another sun sign, because everyone knows their sun sign or their star sign, what they like to say. But the South Node is such an important part of who you are. It's almost like having another sun sign in the chart. So you are a South Node in Pisces, which means you have a lot of Pisces energy. And so, I can see that in your eyes. Like I keep telling you, your eyes, like there's so much depth and so much soul and so much light in your eyes. It's wild. I told you that when we first talked. So that South Node energy and it's in the 4th house. So it's coming from soul wisdom. It's coming from truth. It's coming from consciousness. It's coming from awareness, moving beyond this veil. I'm even wondering if you remember any lifetimes of what it's like for you to be on the other side, to be in spirit, to anything, if you're connected to that as well. Do you have any recollection of any of that? I'm curious.
At times when I go into meditation, I'll get that feeling of being in a light body, and I'll just sort of remember what it was like, in other lifetimes, but not really a specific lifetime yet that has come up for me.
But with that, it's like that's still the linear mind, because we actually spend a lot of time in the in between, right? In the being plasma, being whatever, right? That those are our lifetimes too, or it might not be embodied, but that's still a lifetime, if you want to call it. So what's really interesting is that Saturn is moving into, transiting Saturn is moving into Pisces on March 7th for everyone. But you have your south node at 2 degrees of Pisces. So you're soon going to have Saturn on your south node and it opposing your north node. So this is a big transit for you, and it can play out in many different ways. You might have a mentor, someone that's older than you, come in to kind of guide you, because Saturn is like that grandfather figure, that like old wise eagle, on the top of the mountain. So it could have someone come in to help guide you. Also Saturn to opposing your north node. Saturn is structure and discipline, and your north node is your purpose in life. So there could be actually something even bigger with your career coming out for you, because that north node is in your 10th house of career. And the career is public standing, doing this podcast, getting your message out to the outside world. Okay. So there's some big stuff that will be coming in for you with that. But more importantly, it's that really helping you kind of get more on, and I'm not saying you're not, because we can be doing all the things and then these transits come around and then it just takes us to another level that we didn't know about. And that's just the journey. It's going to happen all the time. So with your north node in Virgo, you're here learning discernment. That's a big thing for this year, but especially north node in Virgo, because the south node in Pisces takes everything in. You feel people's soul, you have compassion, you empathy, you probably want to help like everyone on the street. If they have no money, you just want to give them like all your money and the shirt off your back. And that's beautiful and all, but you're learning to have some boundaries, because it's almost like you could give too much of yourself. So there's going to be some lessons in that. And especially with that Cancer energy. I mean, trust me, I have that as well. There's some Pisces energy with that Cancer. And I mean, let me tell you, my 20s were very confusing.
Yeah.
So.
And the Venus, I think the Venus is a really important one for people to look at as well, because it's the relationships and the love aspect of the astrology. So
let's talk about that. So you have, I'm just seeing the aspects here. Okay, so you have Venus in your 7th house, which is the house of relationships, in Gemini. So Venus in Gemini, I have that too. And it's very interesting. It's like, this is the thing. At the end of the day, you need to be mentally stimulated. If you are not, like, I don't care how hot they are, like it's not going to matter like long term for you. You need that mental stimulation. You need it to be curious. You have questions. It's also Venus, the way we connect to people. So it's that witty banter, it's that laughing, it's that joking, it's that cheekiness, that it's a great skill to have while you're doing a podcast, let me tell you. Because you have to think of things on the fly, and I'm telling you, I'm always like, people are like, how'd you do that? I'm like, honestly, my Venus and Gemini, I swear to God. It just comes out of nowhere.
It helps. Yes. It helps.
Yeah. So you have that. And then what's interesting is your sun sign, and we're just going basic here, but these are still things that maybe people could follow along if they pull up their birth chart. You have your sun sign and your Mars in the 8th house. So the 8th house is the natural house of Scorpio. So even though you're a sun in Cancer, which is a water sign, you have this flavor of Scorpio energy, also water. So this is the ability you can really help people transform. Like, you see people and you see through them, and you know their truth, and you know how to transform them. And that's going to develop even more and more and more, but you just see through. And so have you seen that in your life?
Yeah, I just got a whiff of chills and emotion when you said that, because definitely I've had certain encounters in my life where you start seeing the development of a person, and not because, and I don't want to be like the heroic part in their journey, because I know that maybe it was something I said, because something it's those seeds that are planted in people's minds, or even in the podcast, like, oh, I listened to this episode and it changed the way I saw this, and now I'm doing whatever new implementation in my life. Like I've seen that a lot too. And maybe just like planting little seeds.
Well, that's good that you're planting seeds instead of you rescuing them. So you have some of the things in the chart that I say rescue dogs and cats, not men and women.
I love that. I love that.
I mean, we're all here to help each other, but there's a very big difference in taking on projects, right?
Yeah.
And subconsciously and transforming people. You know, I did that so much in my 20s that every boyfriend I had, I realized I just was transforming them. And then afterwards they go off and they're just a new person. And I'm like, wow, wait a minute. And then once I found astrology, I'm like, oh, I'm actually really good at this. I should be doing this for a living, not for my boyfriends.
I love that.
I was unaware that I was even doing that. That's the beauty of astrology. Once I learned, I'm like, oh, I didn't even know I was doing that. I wasn't trying to do anything, you know?
Yeah. And in this life, communication is a huge topic. Like if you don't know how to communicate what you want in the world, then you might not get it. You know, if you don't ask, you don't receive. And Mercury is the sign of communication that I see. I know mine is in Leo. If
in
I'm
the ninth
correct.
house in Leo. Yep. And it's squaring your moon. So there's a lot of processing and talking out your emotions going to be very important for you. And that ninth house is the house of podcasting, higher education, books, writing, getting your message to the outside world. So love that you have a podcast with a Mercury in Leo in the ninth house. That's literally like says podcast all over it right there.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
What do you think beyond just the sun, the moon, like all these planets, when people look at their birth chart, let's say they after this episode, they go on your website and they download it and they look at it. What is the first thing that they should maybe look into or research? What would you recommend for like a beginning manual?
Yeah. Well, I have on my website a bunch of courses called Astro Hacks, and they're little mini hacks. I did a couple of them, different planets that you can go into. So I have that if they want to, but they can also, I mean, if someone is very new, like let's start with the basics. What is your sun, moon, and rising? And again, this is very elementary. But if we don't have the grounding blocks, right, we can't build. So we need to even understand that. Just if you go into human design, you need to understand what are your numbers, what's your incarnation cross, you know, are you a mental projector? Are you a manifesting generator? Like what are you? So that you can build on that, right? Very, very important. So I would say look at sun, moon, and rising, learn the houses. There are 12 houses in a chart, and each house relates to a different area of life. And then look at what sign your sun sign is in, and then what house it's in, and then start there. And then where's your moon, and then what house is it in, and it gives you a flavor. So it's very complex. I have a 10-week level 1, I have level 2, and I have level 3 that I've been doing. So I'm doing a level 1 again in the fall. It'll probably be my last time because I've been doing it for like 9 years. But I love it, and I love watching people understand who they are. And that's why I do this more than just the astrology, is because I get to watch people fall back in love with themselves.
What is the biggest shift that you're seeing right now in your transits?
Oh, God, yeah. So I have Pluto opposing.
We were just going to talk about me out here.
Oh, my God, yeah. So I have Pluto opposing my moon right now, which is, listen, as an astrologer, you shouldn't say a transit is bad or good or hard or whatever. Okay, hard you could say. But I'm going to tell you, if you could choose to not have a Pluto transit, and some people will never go through it in their lifetime, it just depends on their chart configuration, then you're blessed because it's literally ripping me open in all the ways. So my moon's at 29 degrees of Cancer. Pluto is at 29 degrees of Capricorn. So it's opposing it right now. It happened last April for the first time. This is the second round right now in March. Then it will come back over the summer and then the fall and then a little bit next year. And then we're done. So Pluto rips open and transform you, just like what we talked about in the beginning. The moon is your emotions. It's your physical body. I'm on a 12-week detox that I've been on that I didn't even plan accordingly. And it's literally when this is going on because I'm literally ripping everything open and clearing out all the stuff, right? So it's your physical body. It's your emotional body. So yeah, there was a lot of pain points, and I'll be very honest about some stuff. There was this undercurrent of loneliness that has been there. And I've had a really beautiful life since my awakening. I mean, it's been rough, very rough, very rough, but I've had so much fun in my expansion. And there's always been this little pulse of loneliness that would show up every once in a while because I had it growing up. And then when Pluto started opposing this round, my moon, it started coming up again. And when I say that we feel it internally, I mean, it literally was just like some days of just crying and crying and crying. And so I was very aware very quickly that, okay, this was coming up because it's not the truth of who I am. And it was a density that's being cleared. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's already so much better that listen, I'm very independent. I've gone around the world by myself and I do things on my own, but I'm now making more decisions and choosing it. And it's from a place of complete freedom that I didn't have before. And so why am I telling you that? Because that's what Pluto does. Pluto goes in, pulls out, rips stuff out, and it does. It's painful, but it's showing you your power. It's showing you really the truth, and it's alchemizing you. And already I feel so much different. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like I don't have that pulse there like I did before because I let myself feel it. I let myself be in my bed crying. I let myself process. I let myself do emotional work on it. I let myself talk with my family about some stuff that's going on, right? That was still on my mind from childhood. So I'm allowing myself to be in it and process it. And that's why it's moving through.
I love that.
Yeah.
And one of the last topics I wanted to get into you is that you said that 98% of your clients are women. That number has probably changed because I read that a while ago.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you how we can begin to open the masculine more to this energy that's coming through, because there is a quote that I want to read from you is that if we only look at life through our logic, we will never understand the intricacies of who we are. And I think for the masculine, which is very logic oriented, and I personally am as well. Like sometimes when I want to open up these psychic abilities, I get blocked because my logic, my mind.
It's the mind always.
And I wanted to ask you, what are some things that we can start doing to begin to open up this world of the feminine and bridge a little bit those two together?
This is a profound question. And I'm going to start off with saying something that maybe most people won't say. I don't know if I have the answer at all.
Yeah.
But what I will say is that, yes, most of my clients are women because women seem to be more open to this. And when I have in the past read charts for men, it was very difficult a lot of times doing chart readings for men. Not everyone, of course, but for the most part, because there was a lot of ego there. And there was a lot of, I don't believe this, but my wife bought this for me, or I don't believe this, but my daughter made me do, and that's what's blocking. I think that women are, just by nature of us giving birth and going through these cycles monthly, we are as a whole, and yes, I'm generalizing, but I'm going to generalize here. On a whole, we are in tune with more of the cosmic rhythm because of that. The moon is connected to our menstrual cycle. I mean, that alone, says so much. And the moon is the psychic abilities. So, we all have feminine and masculine in us, whether we're a man or a woman, but just by nature, the women are more open to this. So how do the men do this? I don't know. And I will tell you this. So recently, over the past 8 months, I've seen so many of my friends, my girlfriends, were in relationships, and they're going through divorce, got a divorce, separation, shocking, didn't really see that coming. Everyone's breaking up. And what I'm seeing is, and obviously it takes two to tango, and I'm well aware of that. None of us are saints, and so we all have stuff. But the common theme from talking to each of them I'm seeing is that these women were evolving, and these men weren't moving. And they're stuck, and they're not catching up. And it's very interesting that I'm seeing that. So I do think there's a bit of a in the 3D realm, we can say an issue, but also I do trust and I do know that the masculine and feminine energies are balancing out even more. I mean, it might take a more, their program being shattered even more, right? It's going to maybe take something even more massive for it to break that shell. But I also know the astrology, and we're moving to higher states of consciousness at such rapid rates. So at some point, more men are going to have to see this. And I just think it's a lot of ego, and I'm not blaming them at all. I think it's the programming from how they were raised and how a man should be, right? So there's a lot of that. And my heart goes out to that, you know? And I don't know what it feels like to be a man. All I know what it feels like to be a woman with a Cancer moon at 29 degrees, which is the full expression, and going through menstrual cycles like every month, and I feel everything. So I don't know what it's like to not feel anything, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what that's like. So I can only speak from myself.
Yeah. And it's helped me a lot, because you also mentioned that there's people in our life that help open our heart again.
Yes.
And I've also found, and ultimately it's our own choice if we open or close it, but there are also people that, you know, inflict this amount of pain and we shut down and close it. Mm-hmm. So for me, I was going through some experiences where I closed my heart. And the moment I started opening it back up again, that's when I started just shifting and tuning into my emotions and speaking from my truth from the heart. So it's just a process, I think, of, they call it that like 6-inch journey from your head to your heart, where everything transforms. But thank you so much for sharing that insight. Yeah.
And again, I don't have the answer and I don't know, but with us moving to higher states of consciousness, it is more heart, and our heart, we know, is stronger than our brain. And that's the electromagnetic field. That's one of the first things that Spirit showed me, was the heart. And I'm like, what does this mean? What does this mean? And it took me about 7, 8 years to figure out what they meant. And then I'm like, oh, I got it, because I dropped in. You know, we are a mental-based society, collective, shifting to a heart base. So it will happen. It's just a process.
I love that so much. Yeah. Danielle, we could keep going. I know we could keep going. There's so much more I want to talk to you. So at some point, if it comes up, I'd love to do this again with you.
Oh my God, I would love to.
We end every podcast with what I call the final trio. There are 3 rapid fire questions. You can answer in any way you want. There's no like length or limit to it. But before that, people are going to want to connect with you. People are going to go deeper into your work. So where can they find you? What are you working on right now that you'd like to mention? Yeah,
so they can find me on Instagram at I am Danielle Paige, Paige. Please know there's a lot of fake accounts of me. I'm never going to message you. I'm never going to ask to do a reading or tell you I'm reading your field. I'm not doing that. There's fake accounts, so it's not me. Yeah. You could also find me on my website at daniellepage.com. Again, it's Paige. And I just launched my membership that will be opening again. It's helping people basically go through life in a multidimensional way. I have my Astrology Mystery School coming up. I have a spiritual business course coming up. I have so many things that channel through me on a daily basis. So I'm just excited to keep sharing. And that, yes, the books are coming eventually.
Thank you for creating. Thank you. I honor that. The first question from the final trio that I have is, what is humanity moving from and moving towards right now, energetically?
Oh, we'll say from a head-based society, like we said, to a heart-based.
Love that. You said that spirit is your greatest teacher. What is the best advice that you've received from your spirit?
Ooh. I would say now 15 years on this journey of conscious awakening and 44 on this earth plane, the most important thing is truly self-love. Because at the end of the day, we're all going to go through stuff, and it comes back to loving and honoring yourself. And really, I'm trying to teach this with my students in the membership. We waste so much energy with blame, shame, and guilt on ourselves for things all day long, where it's literally the biggest waste of energy. So we have to learn true self-love. And that's honoring that we're not going to be perfect and we're not going to get it right, and we still love ourselves through it.
What's the greatest act of self-love that you've done in the last 5 years?
Oh my God, there's so many.
I don't know why I said 5, though. It was just a number that came up.
Yeah. God, there's so many. Okay, the greatest act of self-love. honestly, I don't even know where to start, because I feel like I truly live my life in alignment with my soul, in the sense of I won't do anything to betray myself. There was someone that I was dating and everything was really good. And then all of a sudden, like instantly it just changed. And it was super disrespectful the way I was being treated. And immediately I put my foot down and I was like, oh, absolutely not. Even though I felt like I had a big heart connection with this person, it was absolutely not. I will not be treated like this. And even though I still was like in love with this person. So absolutely not.
So cutting that off. It
didn't matter.
Amazing.
Anything else. I will not be treated like that.
Yeah. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
The last question, we have to travel a little bit into the future. We call this the time capsule question.
Oh, I love it. Here we go.
Where basically, let's say we're 10, 20 years down the line and the next generations, the young generations now, are stepping into leadership roles in society. These are the next business leaders of the world. These are the next presidents, the next CEOs, the next spiritual teachers, the next authors, creatives, healers. And you were to set a time capsule for them, and they would open this at a time where they needed the most guidance. Humanity is about to enter the new earth and they need tools to lead. If they were to open it, what would you have put in this time capsule? It could be anywhere from a book, a frequency, a vibration, a poem, a word, anything that you could think of for these leaders to be empowered to bring humanity into the new earth.
Ooh. Okay, this is a loaded question. This would be so fun. I'm like, what do we put in there? Let's put a lot. I'm
Anything.
a Taurus.
Quantum possibilities.
I pack a lot of things as a Taurus. So, okay. I mean, we can go down to it being as simple as a mirror that says, remember who you are. For them to really, truly look in the mirror and remember. And let's imagine if we had all these magic powers, this mirror was a magical mirror that showed them their true multidimensionality. Because this whole experience, it's wild. You know, I chose to be Danielle, right? In this lifetime, I chose to have dark hair. I chose to, you know, have this body, and that's part of this. So we can't bypass it, nor should we. This is the experience, you know, God expressing itself as Danielle, right? And we're all doing this. But Danielle is not who I am at all. That's so limited. That's a fraction of who I am. So it would be to help people remember the truth of who they are.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
That brought the image, and we can slide in the Lion King DVD player.
Oh my God, yes. And it's some dramatic music while it's playing. And then I hold them up. Yeah, I'll hold them up.
Oh, I love that. Danielle, thank you from the heart so much for doing the work, and I felt vibrationally attracted and connected to you.
Yes.
And I'm very glad that we made this happen. So appreciate you. Would love to do this again, and sending much love for your future.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Endeavors and everything.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me on.